Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nightmare's Edge. I have a special video for all of you today. I have the amazingly talented Lady Nopeingham joining me for some terrifying encounters we found on Reddit and other sources. If you haven't done yourself the favor and checked out her channel, her links will be listed in the description. Be sure to go check out her channel and subscribe. She's got some amazing content. As for today's stories, they are encounters that I believe that most of us would have a hard time reconciling in our minds. So I want to say thank you to the authors for their permission to read these stories. I will link their Reddit handles and the links to their stories in the description below. Be sure to check them out and comment if you have any information. Before we get started, if you have a story of your own you'd like to submit, you can send it to the email that's listed in the description. Now sit back, relax, and let me tickle your inner fears.
Ouija boards are a joke, right? By Anonymous. To start off, the only reason I wish to remain anonymous is because those involved are still around. Some of these people still suffer horrible nightmares from this night's events, and should they happen to stumble upon this story, I don't wish to cause them any further distress. I will also be changing the names of those involved. And while I understand that this story may sound far-fetched and made up, I can assure you, as much as some random guy on the internet can, that this is what happened that night. And with that, I ask you please be careful with using a Ouija board. This was also the event that set me down the insane rabbit hole that is the paranormal world. Back in high school, I liked to party, and so did my friends. We were great at it. Every weekend was something stupid, something crazy, or something fun. In most cases, it was all three. This weekend, however, things changed. It started off much like every other weekend. We chose someone's house to hang out at, of course making sure their parents weren't going to be home. This weekend it was Ricky's house. Ricky's house was a bit of a dump. I think it was built back in the 30s or 40s, and it showed. His family didn't have money, so upkeep was non-existent. The house was usually a mess, but it was a place we could party and no one would ever know. On this night, things were going absolutely fantastic. We were having fun. I had already worked up a bit of a buzz, and no one else was losing their shit yet. At this point, my friend Tom found Ricky's little sister's Ouija board and came tearing into the room where we all were. He was going crazy with the idea that we should play, and everything seemed to be on board. So, we did. I have had my experiences with these boards before, and nothing ever happened. Someone always tried hard to make it seem like the answers were real, were legit, but usually it failed. But I thought it was going to be a great laugh, so of course I agreed. We cleared an area on the floor so that we could place the board and everyone had a seat. We all had one hand placed on the planchette and a drink in the other hand, and it was decided that Ricky would ask the first question as it was his house. And as usual, the first question was, "Is anyone here?" Ricky asked. "Y-E-S," was the response. There was an ooh and an ah. I thought someone was actually pretty good at moving the piece without being noticed. Susie had the next question. "Why are you here?" D-E-A-T-H. Another couple of oohs and ahs, and this time some giggling. I noticed that people were actually starting to get a bit unnerved by what was happening. Tina had the third question. "Is it because you died here?" N-O was the response. The looks around the room were becoming more concerned. I tried not to laugh and could not help but wonder who was moving the planchette, because they were damn good. I kept looking for someone that was trying to hold back a laugh, but didn't see anyone. John had the next question. Are you here for someone? I laughed a bit at this question because I knew it was going to get someone worked up even more. Y-E-S. At that moment, almost everyone removed their hand from the board except myself, Ricky, and Tina. I figured it had to be one of them, but they gave no indication that they were the ones behind it. Everyone started talking about how they were scared and started asking around who was fucking with the board, but no one admitted to it. Slowly, everyone started to come back to the board and place their hands back on the planchette. I decided I was going to watch closely at everyone to see who was tensing just a bit after the next question. Who are you here for? The question was mine, and I watched everyone. R-I-C-K. Before it could finish, everyone once again started pulling their hands from the board and staring at Ricky. I looked at him, and he seemed to be in a lot of distress. It then looked like he was attempting to get up, but before he could stand up entirely, it looked like he tripped and fell into the wall next to the window in the room. His face was now red, and his lips were starting to turn blue. I thought he might be choking on something, so I ran to him and pulled him away from the wall, which seemed more difficult than it should have been, but I didn't really pay any mind to it. I tried to get my body around behind him to perform the Heimlich maneuver, when all of a sudden I felt a push and a slight burning sensation on my chest. At that exact moment, Ricky went flying through the window. I stood there in shock at what I was seeing. This couldn't be right, I told myself. The window was about 5 feet off the ground, so I could not see Ricky laying there. I ran to the window and noticed now that there was someone on top of Ricky with a hoodie. They were pounding Ricky in the face as if they were attempting to beat him to death. I leapt through the window and immediately ran full force into this fucker. I am not a small guy, 5'10" and 220 pounds. Not all muscle, but as a football player, I know how to hit someone. I slammed the entire weight of myself into this person, and they did not move, did not even act as if I had hit them. They didn't even look at me. I could see the blood pouring from Ricky's face. I began pounding the back of this fucker's head with my fist and feet, and nothing, not a single goddamn reaction from him. A couple moments later, a couple of the other guys came to join me in trying to remove this person from Ricky, and all 3 of us had no luck. Once again, I tried to hit this guy with the full force of me running and a shoulder to the head, but this time, before I hit him, he raised one hand to me and sent me flying about 5 feet backwards. I landed hard, and that small burning sensation in my chest was now a raging fire. I could barely breathe. I slowly get to my feet to see the other guys laying on the ground, not moving. Ricky's body didn't seem to react to the blows raining down on him anymore. I actually feared he was dead. And in my last attempt to help my friend, I once again ran to this asshole who might have just killed my friend and wrapped my arms around them. My weight did not even affect this thing. I was trying with all my might to pick this thing up, and nothing, not even a slight lift away from Ricky. And then I felt that fucker's head smash into my nose. I felt the blood immediately start pouring out, but this time I was not fucking moving. I held on for dear life. I had no idea what to do. I could feel the tears streaming down my face, and I was slowly resigning to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to help Ricky. As I was about to give up, I heard Tina coming out of the house, speaking something that sounded an awful lot like scripture. Her voice got louder as she slowly walked towards it. And now Tina began singing something. I didn't understand the words, or even hear them really. All I could think about was how this fucking thing just killed Ricky. I started smashing my forehead into the back of its head, and it felt like a brick wall. The closer Tina got, it felt like the weaker this thing became. I tried one last time to pull this thing off of Ricky, and I felt him raise a little. I heard what I could only describe as a roar come from this thing as it finally shrugged me off like I was a child and stood up. It kicked me square in the ribs, which sent me flying a few feet away. I felt my ribs break. Finally, it turned to face Tina. With that hoodie pulled down over its head, I could not see what was there. I started to take a step towards Tina, and I struggled to get back up. I heard Tina's voice waver as the fear was now starting to settle into her. I took one step towards her, and I finally managed to get back to my feet and planted myself between them. At that moment, Tina's voice almost seemed to regain every bit of strength it had when she first walked out of the door quoting scripture. The thing stopped moving forward and stood there for a moment. I heard something say in my head, "Until next time," and then it sprinted off into the night. I sprinted to Ricky's side and checked for a pulse immediately. There was one, but he was unconscious. His face was so battered beyond recognition, I wasn't certain how he would ever recover. We called the cops and an ambulance. We told the cops our story, and while they didn't think we were lying, they didn't think we were giving the full truth of the situation either. I still don't know what happened to us that night, and there are times I feel it could be a really bad trip from someone drugging us, but even years later, Ricky's face is a reminder that it was not a dream or a bad trip. It is still scarred and mangled from the attack he suffered that night. I still have nightmares of that fire in my chest from when this thing hit me. That is my story, and while I know that most experiences with Ouija boards will never turn out like this one, I do hope that you use caution when playing with them.
This story comes to us from Haunting Dream 1571, entitled, "Saw a Tall, Thin Figure in the Woods." This happened maybe 2 years ago while riding quads with my boyfriend. It wasn't too late at night, maybe around 10 p.m. We were camping at our campground where we have a small trailer surrounded by other camps. In the summer, it's full of kids running around and adults on golf carts. But it was late December and we were one of the few people who go up there in winter since it gets pretty cold and they shut off the water. The woods are a decent bit away from the actual campground. It gets pretty quiet out there, and something about the snow makes everything quieter. I've always felt slightly uncomfortable in the woods at night. My boyfriend told me I was just a paranoid person, and I chalked it up to reading too much creepypasta as a kid. I always felt somewhat safer since we were on a quad and we can go pretty fast if needed. So there we are in the middle of the night enjoying a cold ride, drifting in the snow, then all of a sudden we come to a stop. That's when I get this eerie feeling. I ask him why we stopped, and it was something along the lines of his glove or something on the quad came off. He turned the quad off and bent over, messing with something. I start looking behind me and around me because I'm just someone who's super aware of their surroundings. I look to my left and I see a brown skinny tree that always freaks me out because I mistake it for something else. But then I look to the right of the scary tree and see something even taller and pale looking. I immediately avert my attention from it, being totally freaked out. I find the courage to look back and it seems closer. At this time, I didn't have my glasses on and was just saying it was another tree that looked like a person, and I'm fine. Before I can say anything to my boyfriend, he had finished whatever he was doing and we took off. I buried my face in the back of his jacket, too afraid to see anything else. Still having the feeling of being watched over, I asked if we could go back to the camp and he agreed, since it was so cold. I decided not to say anything to him since he'd want to go back and investigate, or straight up not believe me and write me off as paranoid again, and I did not want to go back there at all. I figured the following day we would go back into the woods during daytime, and I would see that there was another tree that I never noticed before. But when we went back through and there was nothing next to the brown tree, that's when my stomach dropped. That's also when I told him I saw something last night. He told me I should have told him, which he was right, I should have said something, but I was just too scared and just kept it to myself. We still go there occasionally, not as much due to our jobs now, but I've never experienced anything else after that.
My Encounter with a Mocker by Narrow Raspberry 94. During high school, I had my first serious boyfriend of 4 years, Chris. His family moved here from Mexico and mainly spoke Spanish. This matters because his family culture was rich, and I became very close with his mother and siblings who would tell me all sorts of legends. While we dated, tons of strange things happened, but I'll never forget this. We were FaceTiming each other. He was at his family's house and I was at my mom and I's apartment. Mid-conversation, Chris's mom yelled his name really loudly as if calling him over, which I've seen her do a lot when I was over. His face turned pale and I saw him go to look out of a window. "My mom isn't home," he told me. His face was dark and knowing as if this had happened before. While still on FaceTime, his little sister Tita, 6 at the time, came up and asked him why he had called her over, followed by his younger brother Tito, as if he'd been called by Tita. I have more stories specifically about this house, but from what I was told, it was a bit of a family thing. Although we're broken up, I'm still close with the entire family and feel like asking more about it all.
Our next story comes from little_regressor, entitled, How Do I Know If Something is More Than a Poltergeist? Okay, this is going to get weird. 2 weeks ago, I had a box fan sitting in my kitchen in one spot all day long. Then that evening it turned itself sideways. I think, oh, the vibrations made it move, so I fix it and don't think nothing else about it and go to the bathroom. I'm in there less than 5 minutes and come back into my kitchen to see the box fan had turned itself sideways again, but the opposite way. I fix it, turn to face the sink, and then right back around to see the fan has unplugged itself and moved into the middle of the room behind me. With that, I got nervous. So I fix it where the fan can't move unless the table and chairs get moved. My daughter goes into the fridge to get something to drink, and just as she opens the door, the new bottle of Tums on top of it rises and floats above the fridge. I'm watching it happen. Wait until she's coming back into the living room to tell her to look, and when she turns to look, the Tums sit back down on top of the fridge. She gets scared and starts crying, and I'm telling her, don't worry, Mommy won't let nothing happen to you. I call out, whatever is in my house, whatever you are, if you are not of God, I command you to leave, now. Rest of the night, nothing else happens. Jump to 3 days later, the handrails of my shower fly off the wall. The shampoo bottle that we sit in this spot for the last 7 years has never just fell over, falls off the shelf and across the tub. And the doors in the house open themselves up, even locked. Again, I command it to leave in Jesus' name, and it stops for a few more days, other than small noises, little taps and knocks and whispers. Jumping to this morning. This morning, after I got my daughter off to school and was getting veggies cut up to make dinner, I saw a jet black shape of a head peek out of my bedroom. I go to check it out, and when I come back to the kitchen, my knife was moved off the table and onto the counter next to my sink. My cutting board with the onions on it is sitting in my sink, and my broccoli I'd cut up was scattered all across my kitchen floor. I clean up the mess and get my dinner finished and put everything away and wash my dishes. Now I'm seeing short, jet black shadows of people darting in and out everywhere. What is this? Is it a poltergeist or what?
Sleeping with a Ghost by suebieduu. Earlier this year, my friend's sister passed away. I've known the sister for a long time and found her friendly, outgoing and charismatic. She always stood up for herself, but in a way that didn't make you feel like she was attacking you. So, about a month ago, my friend has a girls' night, and we hung out at her mother's house. As the evening wore on, they insisted that I stay the night. They offered me the sister's room, but said if I felt off about it, I could sleep elsewhere. I said that the sister and I always got along fine. She didn't scare me, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. Sometime during the night, I woke up when I felt the room temperature drop, and I got chilled. Well, I'm in my 50s, and thanks to menopause, it has to be really cold for me to get chilled. Then I felt a cold presence next to the bed, and I knew it was the sister. I heard my friend from the other room ask if I was okay, and I told her that her sister was in the room. She told me to tell her to go away. I said that this was her room, and she had every right to stay, and that I didn't mind sharing. Then I felt her lay down in the bed next to me. It took a while for the chill to dissipate, but I eventually fell back asleep. The next morning, I told my friend and her mother what had happened. My friend said she doesn't remember the conversation with me, and that I might have dreamt it. Her mother, on the other hand, believed it and was very happy that her baby girl had joined us for girls' night.
Our next story comes from SpiderTuber6766, entitled An Encounter with the Unexplained. So this is my personal experience. It has only happened once and never again, but I will never forget it. It was 4 years ago in 2018. It was a school night and I was having trouble sleeping. I usually take a while to fall asleep, but this was like I physically couldn't sleep. So I decided to go to the bathroom. I browsed on the phone on the toilet and just went along with my business. The way the house was structured was there was a small hall connecting 2 rooms and the rest of the house. So when I walk back to the room, I look out the hall to the kitchen, and I see it. In the kitchen was a glowing light. It was a rectangle shape floating, as it was surrounded by a black mass of smoky substance. Now at first, I thought it was my fridge, but it was on the wrong side of the kitchen. Then I start to think of other reasons as it stared at me. We kept eye contact for a minute. I was so scared I didn't even think of filming with a phone. But I couldn't be staring all night. I needed sleep and school is tomorrow, so I make a run for my room. As I shut the door, I feel it at the door, as it closed the big distance of the house in just a second. I didn't even lock the door. I didn't care, just jumped in bed and hid under my sheets. Next thing I knew, it was inside my room. I didn't even hear the door open. It floated above my bed as it breathed down my neck. It soon lay in bed with me, as I was too petrified to move. The next morning, it was gone. I slept with that thing all night. I tell my family and friends, and my mother told me that it was a guardian angel. I'm still not sure what I saw. My rational explanation? I was just tired, and I was hallucinating because of it. It wasn't a dream or sleep paralysis because I was moving and awake. I had another small experience with the same being as it slept in my bed again. I just didn't try to do anything, and the next morning, it was gone again. I haven't seen it or felt it since. My brain thought it was the shape of a human with a long black body and light was its face. If you know what I saw, please tell me, because I will not let this rest. I know what I saw was a real being. We were both aware of each other. We both knew we saw each other. So, I must know. Was it a ghost? A shadow person? An alien? Angel? Or demon? Whatever it is, I'm just glad it was friendly.
I'm Not Sure What I Found in the Clearing by KivliK. Hey guys, I'm back. Your advice last time was super helpful, and I'm hoping to ask yet again for your help with my most recent forest encounter. Every year, when we get the first solid snowfall, I head out to the trees beside my in-laws' house to get my pine boughs for my Christmas wreaths. To give some context, my in-laws live in a rural area on 100 acres. When you go up the driveway, the kennels are on the right, There is a barn straight ahead, and to the left is the house. The house has fields right beside it, and they extend back behind the barn. There is a huge bush, 20 to 30 acres of trees, at the back of the field. If you walk past the house to the left, you can walk along the edge of the field. The field drifts to the right, and to your left is a small patch of dense trees and a pretty steep embankment down to the road level. I packed up my dogs Kaiju, Echo, and KivliK, 3 Alaskan Malamutes. You guys thought they were instrumental in my making it home safely from the last time I was out in the forest, so I bring them with me every time I go into the forest now. Kaiju is a big guy weighing about 120 pounds. Not a chunky guy, this is just solid dog. Echo has grown up a bit since our last outing and is almost as big as KivliK now. I get everyone out of the car, and since this is family property they know very well, and they all have fantastic recall, we go off-leash. I brought an offering of tobacco, as suggested by my dear friend, who gave me some incredible insight from an Indigenous Canadian perspective. I made my offering in a safe place where my dogs wouldn't find it and where other animals couldn't get to it, and listened as I was instructed. I didn't have any feelings of immediate fear or anxiety, so I thanked the forest spirits again as instructed, and we made our way down to the pine trees. I cut my boughs from the bottom of the trees and made sure to only take what I needed. I tried to take the branches that are blocking out the smaller trees, growing under or near them. I was putting my cuttings into a bag when I feel like something is off. Kaiju, who normally does his usual perimeter to pee on every tree in sight, was sitting no more than 5 feet from me, facing the tree line on the embankment, totally still. So still that snow was collecting on his fur and was totally undisturbed. This made me take an inventory of my dogs. Echo, bless her heart, is a total spaz when she's off-leash. She has to be running absolutely everywhere. It's like she's afraid she won't get to see everything unless she runs everywhere as fast as she can. She was also sitting completely still, directly beside me, staring towards the embankment. KivliK was the furthest away, maybe 10 to 12 feet, standing, head low, ears up, tail straight down behind her. I immediately thought it must be a deer. There's a heavily used, well-worn game trail down here, and these guys love to watch the deer. I still have a nagging feeling something isn't quite right, so I pack up a little faster. Then I hear it. Kaiju is growling. Kaiju never growls. He's a giant teddy bear. The scariest noise he makes is a Chewbacca sound, and that's just adorable. But now he's definitely growling. KivliK has circled back, head still low. If you need a visual, think stalking wolf. And she's grumbling too. Echo is now standing up, hackles up, baring her teeth. Message received, kids. We are out of here. I grab my bag, check my exit options, and start walking briskly towards the closest trail up the embankment. Kaiju's up front, Kiv and Echo on either side. Then I realized the trees are silent. No birds, no wind, no nothing. It's like we are in a sound vacuum. Kaiju has now stopped dead and is staring straight down. There's a skull, not sure what it is, could be a deer, could be a calf honestly. Not sure what it could be. I have photos to help hopefully identify what it was I was looking at in the link below. In a small shallow, for lack of a better description, grave. No other bones, just the skull. A very clean skull. Kaiju's growling again, and he's got his teeth out this time. I noticed up the embankment there was what looked like a makeshift shelter. This shelter was directly overlooking the hole with the skull in it. All of my dogs are losing it now. They're full-on howling now, which is being answered by the other 3 dogs up at the kennel. It was eerie. It was like they were trying to call for reinforcements. I got an overwhelming urge to be still, like something was trying to wrap me in a blanket to hide me. All I could get out was the word Nacht, night in German, which is what I usually use to tell my dogs to watch me. They all stopped howling, but hackles stayed up and low growls kept going. As soon as the blanket feeling was gone, we ran. I have been to that cluster of trees 100 times. I have never found bones of anything down there. I have never felt like I'm being watched, and I have never been scared to be there. We regularly plant new saplings down there and clear out the grapevine from the older trees so that they don't get choked out. We put out peanut butter pine cones with birdseed for the birds in the winter and keep the hunters out of that area so the animals have a safe place to rest. Am I crazy? Am I looking for something that isn't there? I really hope that this is just a case of an overactive imagination. Here is a link to the photos I took today. As always, thank you all in advance for any insight you may be able to offer.
Our next story comes from DaConsolePeasant, entitled, I Was Haunted by a Ghost in a Ghostbusters Home. Some backstory first. Every year, my family consisting of myself, my dad, mom, and brother, 3 years younger, vacation either to Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard. By the summer of my 8th grade year, we had vacations at 6 houses in total, and so doing this kind of trip was very familiar and exciting. As of right now, I'm in college, and so my memory of what took place that summer is a bit hazy for some parts, but other parts I have ingrained in my brain. I'm not going to try and ham up the story, so this is the best of what I remember, how the events played out from my own perspective. In the month of August 2015, my family, along with my grandparents, my cousins, one same age as me, and the other 3 years older, and my aunt and uncle, had booked a house on Martha's Vineyard for a week and a half. My family, however, would only be staying for a week as our ferry prevented us from staying longer. Ferry tickets can be extremely hard to get around this time of year. Only 2 days before leaving did our grandparents reveal to us that this house was actually owned by the Dan Aykroyd and was a winter resort for him and his wife that they rent out during the summer. Psyched out of our minds, we were pretty excited to check the place out. Plus, we got an accompanying beach pass, which was a mile away. Skipping to then, we get off our ferry and arrive to the house. My brother and I immediately just out of the car and started exploring the house. Our grandparents would arrive later in the day, with our cousins a day later. To my knowledge, this house is still up for renting, so if anyone is interested, you might be able to see pictures of the house. I haven't been able to since this trip, but I can describe the house as pretty big. The pebble driveway led to the house, which is raised onto a hill. This means the garage basement was level with the driveway, split in half with the living room on the left and the garage on the right, while the main floor was above. Stairs on the right led up to a very nice deck with a hot tub and glass windows along the side of the house. The inside was pretty spacious, and there was 5 bedrooms, including the master bedroom, and a makeshift bunk bed in the basement. My grandparents slept in the master bedroom, and everyone else in the normal rooms. Now, because my brother and I usually get the shit end of the stick, we naturally get stuck in the basement. Fun. Now to describe the basement. A narrow L-shaped staircase along the house entrance and decks leads into the basement, which has concrete floors and walls, but has many rugs all around. The basement is set up in such a way so that this is the perspective of having the staircase on my left. It counts as a bedroom, but its primary use is for entertainment, with a pool table in the center, a couch on the left of the pool table, and a dresser to the right. The basement room is long and rectangle shaped. At the far right-hand corner, there was a rocking chair, and along the right walls were 3 locked doors spread out, leading to what I assume was the garage and or some other room. To the far left-hand side above was your typical basement sky window. The bunk bed was next to the long L part of the staircase, so opposite across the staircase of where you would come down from. The ceiling of the basement was only 7 foot, or 7 foot 6 inches high, lined with pipes and ventilation airways, so the top bunk bed was pretty close and somewhat claustrophobic. I got the top bunk since I won rock, paper, scissors with my brother. Hopefully, my description is adequate. Now, the basement is a bit weird. For whatever reason, I didn't like being down there alone. It just gave off a vibe that wasn't as homey or welcoming as the rest of the house. My family takes us to the beach, so the first day and night was enjoyable as we were setting into our new 1-week house. I'm becoming less of a fan of being in the top bunk, since it's actually pretty difficult to get down from, with the ceiling so low. Our cousins arrived the next day, and so we spend the day doing kid stuff, exploring and messing around. As night came, my family had dinner with my cousins and my grandparents, and soon bedtime came around. My brother and I went to bed, as normally as one would. I remember waking up, feeling like I'm wide awake, but my eyelids feel heavy. I usually tend to wake up in the middle of the night, so this feels like habit. My eyes move towards the dresser, where a digital clock casts the room in a semi-green glow. It reads 2:16. My eyes scan the room, my focus directed towards the sky basement window. The moon was near full that night with no cloud cover, and so it was pretty bright, casting an eerie beam to the center of the wall on the other side of the room. My eyes followed the light and landed on what I can only describe as a white figure next to the rocking chair. Time slowed down as my mind registered in horror what I was actually seeing. The figure looked around your average height of a male, wearing something like a white hoodie. No legs were visible, so there was only black, and I couldn't see the face. The hood being draped over, it didn't have hands, but its arms were moving around each other, at the center of its body, sort of like that dance move. I forget the name, in some kind of tumbling motion. After a second or so, I slap out of my horror, start screaming as loud as possible, and pull my blankets over my head. I keep screaming until my parents come down from upstairs, and I hysterically keep telling them there was a man on the other side of the room. Naturally, they don't believe me, and my dad thought I was dreaming, but the thing is, I was fully conscious, and it wasn't a lucid dream. I could move because I shifted my head to look at the clock on the dresser. My brother was pretty pissed that I woke him up, but also pretty freaked out. We didn't sleep in the basement for the rest of the vacation. A smaller side story happened to my grandmother on the last day she and my grandfather were at the house. At some point during the night, she heard the bathroom door close. The Grandmaster's bedroom door is pretty heavy, being solid wood, but she thought it was my grandfather going to the bathroom. In the morning, she asked why he was so loud going to the bathroom the night prior, and he said he hadn't. The master bed is pretty big and she was half asleep when it happened, so she wouldn't have noticed if my grandfather was in the bed or not. When they go to leave for the ferry, the cleaners came early, and so my grandparents asked them if they think the house is haunted, which the cleaners believed it was. This is probably one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had, but sometimes I wonder, whatever that thing was, that it might not have been a ghost, but actually something more tangible. Something like an actual person who somehow came in through one of the 3 locked doors in the basement. I like to think it's a ghost though, because I think it's less terrifying than a person. And the basement doors were still locked when my parents checked after coming down to see what I was screaming about. Plus, of all places to be haunted, I find it hilarious that it would be Ghostbuster Dan Aykroyd's house. Thanks again to the authors for allowing Lady Nopeingham and I to read these stories. If you wish to check out those stories, again, the information will be provided in the description. Also, I want to give another huge thank you to Lady Nopeingham for joining me today. And be sure to go check out her channel. You will not be disappointed. So, until next time, remember, just because you couldn't see it, doesn't mean it wasn't watching you.